Hello! This is a video that is probably going to be unscripted just because, again, I don't have a lot of time, but this is a topic that's really exciting for me to talk about. I'll try to get it done in one sitting, but if not, the world won't end tomorrow, I guess. One of my favorite nuances in character writing has to do with contradictions. To put it simply, when a character says things that they don't actually believe, or that maybe they do believe but aren't actually true at all, and their actions betray them. Sort of like when someone asks you something and you know that what they're asking isn't what they're actually asking. That sounds a lot more confusing out loud than it did in my head. This is why I use examples when I explain things. I am going to use 3 different examples that I've recently seen. The first example I'm going to use is Dr. Tenma from the new anime Pluto, and I guess also the manga, even though I haven't read it. At one point in the story, the robot that Dr. Tenma created, called Atom, is murdered. Now, since a robot is a machine, if it's not too damaged, there is the possibility of quote-unquote bringing that robot back to life. So when Tenma finally resurfaces after the news, everyone expects that this is what he's going to try to do. But to their dismay, what he says is, "I am just here to say my goodbyes, Adam is dead." However, almost immediately after saying this, Dr. Tenma goes and starts working on repairing Atom. I was watching this with my younger brother, who turned to me and said, "What? But he just said..." And so I explained to him how I think this scene was intended to be understood. I think what Dr. Tenma meant when he said that he is not going to bring Atom back to life is not that he wasn't going to try to fix Atom, but that the robot he brings back to life may not be the Atom that they know and love. The reason why Atom even exists was because Dr. Tenma lost his biological son Tobio and built Atom as a way to replace him, like as an exact replica of Tobio but as a robot. But Dr. Tenma quickly realized that while Atom was this kind and wonderful boy, he was not Tobio. There were way too many nuanced differences, and he had to come to terms with the fact that you cannot perfectly recreate a complex human being. And with that in mind, he knows that he may not be able to perfectly fix Atom. He may not be the same person they knew. Dr. Tenma's character may not have gotten a ton of screen time in Pluto, but he was one of my favorites. The way he processes grief is truly fascinating to me. I think he isn't able to truly grieve for Atom or even Tobio until after Atom dies and then Gesicht dies. Gesicht being the protagonist robot of the show, by the way. And it's not until he sees Gesicht's wife, who is also a robot, struggling to express emotions at all because she is not a human and doesn't know how to process them. In showing this artificial woman how humans grieve, Tenma is finally able to grieve himself. He's at this point been less emotional than all the robot characters combined. This is just so clever and beautifully nuanced. Next character up is Lloyd from Spy Family. I'm actually not going to talk about anything that happened recently in the anime, but one thing that happened in the first season and a few things that happened in the manga that have not been animated yet. So we all know Lloyd is the perfect spy. He's essentially sold his identity or any kind of connection to the outside world and completely embraced the role that is Twilight. But we start to see a lot of subtle and maybe some not so subtle nuances and changes in Lloyd's behavior once his mission changes, is ordered to at least appear like a family man, a husband, a father, a psychiatrist. This is only for the sake of enrolling their quote-unquote child into a school in order to get closer to a politician whose son goes to that school. This is Lloyd's most stressful mission so far, and he's worked in terrorist organizations undercover. And I think that's because he has no idea how to appear normal, because he never has been normal. Most of all, I think it's revealing to himself that he is not a perfect spy. He is a human. One of the first and most evident contradictions in Lloyd's behavior, I think, is during the interview where they're trying to enroll their adopted daughter into Eden College. One of the teachers interviewing their family is very rude and makes some very unkind, disrespectful remarks towards Lloyd's new quote-unquote wife and daughter. Lloyd is surprised to find himself getting very upset. He thinks, this isn't my real wife, or my daughter even, right? So this doesn't make any sense. I should not be reacting like this. Why won't my body listen to my mind? To the audience, it's super obvious why. But before we call Lloyd super dense here, let's take in mind his backstory. Growing up, Lloyd didn't really know what a regular family was like. His father was very abusive and his mother was kind, but everyone he knew, including his mother, died because of the war. So other than very fleeting, faint memories of his mother's warmth, Lloyd has nothing to remember. He has nothing to go on for how families work, how they feel about each other. I think his research and understanding his role as the character Lloyd Forger, husband and father, is completely superficial because he just cannot understand that unless he's experienced it. Lloyd is getting his first real taste of the family experience now with this pretend family. He just doesn't understand this for a long time in the series because he doesn't know what that means. So he says things that we know aren't true, like, "Oh, I'm just off my game," or like, "I don't know what's wrong with me. This family is only for the sake of the mission. I feel nothing for them." Lies, lies, lies. Lloyd is lying to himself, but the audience can clearly see that his expressions when holding Anya or when looking at Yor are very real, even if they're not fully developed yet. I think Lloyd does not really understand what is happening to him until much more recently in the manga. I think he is starting to. In, I think, the second latest chapter, Lloyd disguises himself as Yuri from the secret police while trying to bamboozle them in some way. I kind of forget what was happening. But things don't go according to plan, and he runs into the real Yuri. Of course, Lloyd can't allow his cover to be blown, and he can't allow himself to be taken into custody because that would seriously jeopardize his mission. So the natural course of action would be to dispatch him and get out of there. I'm sure he's thinking this, but instead of killing him, he just wounds him. Yuri also wounds Lloyd, but that's probably because he's not as experienced with a gun as he is at being a psycho. But we know that Lloyd is skilled enough to easily kill someone from the SSS. More importantly, he knows it. So the fact that his body didn't do what he just told it to do immediately freaks him out. He asks himself, why did I hesitate? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because Yuri happens to be essentially his brother-in-law. Yor may not be aware that her brother works for the secret police, but it doesn't matter. She loves him. Lloyd instinctively hesitates to kill Yuri because he knows that would break his wife's heart. To make this even more clear, the fight seems to kind of drag out, and I think this is definitely because Lloyd is trying not to hurt him. But finally, he gets the upper hand and is about to go in for the kill again when Yuri says his wife's name. In response, Lloyd lowers his gun and walks away. The best thing about this scene is that all that stuff that I just told you that was going through Lloyd's mind, well, we don't see any of that. We aren't told any of that. We just know from watching him. All of Lloyd's thoughts that he's just a spy who has to do his job are being contradicted by his movements, by his actions, by his behaviors. Lloyd's actions tell us that he is first and foremost a husband to Yor, not a spy. It's not until he goes home to his wife that night that he slowly starts to admit to himself, I have weaknesses. I usually don't like spy characters in most fiction that I watched, like Mission Impossible, the Bourne series, if that counts, James Bond, ugh. Don't like them because they don't feel like people. They just explore the spy aspect of the character and forget that this is still a human being. I think the most interesting thing about a character is never their occupation or their title, and it's always the fact that they are complex humans, just like us. The next example is Davy or Stardust from the new obscure superhero anime called Shy. In this story's world, each country has a superhero representing it, and Stardust represents England. He is summoned by the United Superhero Board of Operations or whatever to fight the hero from Japan who is very new and very young. Her name is Shy. The reason why he's summoned to fight her is because she is very young and inexperienced, and he is the exact opposite. Hero's boss is concerned that Shy will get killed the next time she actually goes into combat because she has no experience. The reason why Stardust is the one selected for this task is because he has a reputation for being heartless. So cold and lacking in empathy that he can do literally any job, no matter how unpleasant. The unpleasant job at hand being that he has to beat up a little girl. And he certainly seems to live up to his reputation. Not only does he not go easy on her, he does not hesitate to deal brutal damage. He doesn't flinch. He seems absolutely indifferent to the pain he is inflicting on such a sweet, innocent person. For all appearances, Stardust really is this heartless monster. But because of some excellent character writing, it's not that black and white. Before any of this started, Stardust told Shai that she should step down, she should just quit being a hero, she should save herself the trouble. It says something along the lines of, "You are a kind person, and in order to live this life, you have to be heartless like me." Shai refuses, even though Stardust makes it very clear that she is going to get seriously hurt. If not by him, then someone else will. In fact, she won't survive. He tells her to quit. He tells her to go home again and again throughout the fight. And again, she refuses, no matter how badly he beats her up. Stardust is right on the mark when he said that Shai is kind. She is so kind that she can see what perhaps even the audience can't right away. Stardust keeps saying that he is heartless, that he feels nothing, that he is cold, calculating, and cruel. The exact opposite of Shai, and yet she calls him out on the fact that he is trying to protect her. He keeps telling her to go home, he keeps telling her to give up because he doesn't want her to get hurt. He's fighting her so brutally because he wants her to understand that she will probably die if she keeps going. Amazingly, instead of being angry that this man is kicking her face in, she is touched at his care for her. Up until this point, we haven't seen Stardust fazed by anything. Until now. This is the first person he has seen in perhaps forever who does not have a glimmer of hatred in her eyes towards him. He is shocked that she can call him kind after what he just did. Her kindness toward him is making him feel angry, and he asks himself why. This supposedly uncaring man with a heart of stone finds that his heart is moved for the first time in years. After the fight, Stardust tells the others to take care of her and that he had already called a doctor beforehand. He said that even though she managed to get a hit in like he told her to, he still thinks that she should quit being a hero. But even though those are his feelings on the matter, he also admits that it's probably people like her who are going to change this world and not people like him. Afterwards, we see that Stardust is still upset over Shai calling him kind, and he keeps telling himself that he is not kind. But we know that this is not exactly true. Stardust is cold and does struggle with empathy, but he is definitely not heartless. Whether you love him or whether you think this guy belongs in jail, I think we can at least agree that he's a well-written character. I definitely did not make this video in one sitting, and I want to apologize for the sometimes louder or quieter ways my voice seems to dip, or I'm not sure if it's also the audio quality. Anyways, I'm sorry, and I hope you can still hear and understand what I was trying to get across. I really want to applaud all of these characters, or rather whoever was writing them, because communicating that much through little more than facial expressions and actions is not easy. And it takes a huge understanding of the way people behave, which is why a lot of writers these days you see using dialogue or relying almost completely on dialogue to communicate these things instead, and it just does not have the same impact. I want to learn to be this good of a writer, so studying these characters is hugely helpful for me, and I hope it helps you guys too. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye!